What is the worst physical pain you have ever experienced? About 14 years ago, I decided to get my tonsils out. My ENT noticed how closed up my sinus passages were, and before the surgery asked if I'd like them opened up as well. Sure, let's get it all done. Recovery was okay. About 3 months later, I started getting a headache. Within 24 hours, I was pretty much immobilized from the pain and kept a warm compress over my eyes to keep the light out. I went back to my specialist. He said, "You have a migraine," and prescribed Vicodin or Percocet. When that didn't do anything to help the pain, even doubling the dose, I called my ENT back. He said, "Go to the ER," but in that tone that says, "Ya big baby." They stuck something in my arm, I passed out, and woke up feeling great. Next morning, I looked like someone punched me in the eye. Went back to my ENT, and he showed me the scan they took in the ER. I had such a severe sinus infection I was fit to burst. He was very apologetic for basically brushing off my concern. I waited until I was 32 to get my tonsils out. It was pretty brutal for the first 2 weeks or so. I'm glad I did it, as I sleep much better and get sick less. But it was a tough recovery. I had mine out at 35. Had a terrible sharp pain in my throat when it dried out to the point of setting an hourly alarm when I slept so I could wake up and drink water. Ended up having emergency surgery for bleeding that wouldn't stop. Don't know what that surgeon did, but the pain was gone after that. An infection resulting from a tumor in the marrow of my jawbone split it open along its length like an overripe fruit. It was approximately how it sounds. Jesus tap dancing Christ, that sentence just made the devil himself shudder. Tooth abscess in the early days of the pandemic. I wasn't able to see a dentist for 5 days. 5 days of the worst and most unrelenting pain I've ever experienced. I couldn't sleep or eat the entire time. I was losing my mind by the end of it. I'm with you. During the pandemic also. I ended up in the hospital for a few days because we couldn't find a dentist who was open and took my insurance, and it got so bad they were afraid of the infection entering my brain. I am one of a small percentage of people who, when quickly detoxing from heroin, actually came close to dying. Alcohol and benzodiazepines are typically the two substances that kill people when they try to quit suddenly. Heroin, it just feels like you're going to die, but 99% of the time you don't. In 2011, after many attempts, I finally gave up on the stuff and hid myself away in my apartment. About 18 hours in, I got all the usual symptoms. Within about a day, I had a headache so bad I could barely walk. About 36 hours in, the headache had turned into what I can only describe as someone taking a wide-gauge knitting needle and shoving it through the back of my skull and swishing it around my brain. I got hot white spots in my vision that would expand and contract with the pain levels, and as they expanded, I went blind. I lost a bunch of motor function, and the only thing I could do is scream bloody murder, and I actually peed myself as I crawled to the front door of my apartment. My neighbors, thinking I was being assaulted or worse, called the police, and they arrived pretty quickly, and I told them everything. Was rushed to a local hospital, and went through a bunch of tests. They discovered that my brain was bleeding from acute opioid withdrawal. The silver lining to that is, it allowed me to be qualified for medical detox, which is something typically only reserved for alcohol and benzos in my area. So yeah, definitely the worst pain ever. If I had a gun in my hand at the moment, I would have been fully prepared to end it all given the level of pain. 12 years later, and many struggles, I'm about 10 years free from opiates, and almost 3 from everything else. Sobriety is a gift. Thanks for reading my novel. Congratulations on your sobriety. That's a crazy story. Sounds like you would have died had your neighbors not called the cops, as well as if the cops didn't take your situation seriously and take you to the ER. Glad to have you with us. Having an ovarian cyst burst your fallopian tube feels a bit like your butthole exploded. Although it's terrifying BC, you don't really know what the pain is at the time. I've had 2 kids also. The doctors removed my appendix because they didn't realize it was a burst ovarian cyst. Fun times. The day before I started first grade, I accidentally sliced a deep cut through my hand that nearly severed my pinky entirely. I actually didn't even register it right away because the knife cut through the nerve on that side of the hand. The worst pain wasn't the cut itself, but sticking my hand in the disinfecting solution in the ER was a feeling similar to my entire hand being set on fire. Any long-term issues, / do you have full functional use of your pinky? Nope, pinky is fully operational. I had surgery to reattach the nerve a few weeks after the cut. The anesthesiologist asked me if I wanted to hear a knock-knock joke while he started putting me under, and I was out before he got to the punchline. I've always wondered how it ended. He knocked you out, that's the joke. I had severe breast pain from my cancer that grew rapid and fast. Worst pain I ever experienced. I felt so much relief when during my first round of chemo and pain disappeared within 2 days. So worth it. I'm doing a lot better now, and the cancer disappeared in my breast. I took barely any pain meds for my surgeries because they were nothing. There is a chance I am Ned, or Need. All my best wishes for no evidence of disease, now and forever. I had abdominal surgery, search RPLND, for cancer 10 years ago. There is a scar that goes from my crotch to just below my sternum where they took all my guts out, extracted the tumors, and put my guts back in. About 8 hours after surgery, pumped full of drugs, I decided to go for a walk. I used the bed control to seat myself upright, used my IV dolly as support to get out of bed, then carefully, like a bent-over geriatric, shuffled my way to the door. See, the trick was to support myself as much as possible with my lower back and keep my abdomen out of it. And it worked for a few steps until the vertigo hit me. I lurched forward and tensed, and then I felt my intestines settle. The hemispheres of my abdomen strain against the internal stitches. The two halves sort of float independently, and every layer of skin rip against the staples. I basically got to feel a nice little sample of evisceration, and there was no amount of narcotic numbness that could stop pain that deep. Truly, I empathize with William Wallace. It wasn't fun, so I puked blood, which didn't feel nice, shuffled my way back to bed, and hit the drug button. I had a RPLND surgery as well for testicular cancer, and my staples ripped open, and I had a 3-inch opening that I had to pack with gauze for 3 months for it to close. I had to pack and repack the wound multiple times a day. It was foul. Rough. Mine didn't heal very well, as I went to bone marrow carboplatin regimen just a few months later. Still got a weird ridge around my navel, plus the bleo marks. If I had known they'd be permanent, I would have scratched a 6-pack shadow onto myself. Healing from 1, 2, 3rd-degree burns. Agree. Had 2nd-degree burn on my leg with sun poisoning and would rather go through natural childbirth than ever go through that again. I got burned by gasoline. Guy tossed a jerry can into pit I was standing next to. Removing bandages and cleaning was terrible.